Okay, we can now start our meeting. I wish to call to order the Board of Directors meeting for the Bloomington County Solid Waste Management District. And I will ask Mr. McGlasson to call the roll, please.
McKim. Jones.
Here.
Hamilton. Here. Piedmont Smith. Thomas. Swafford. Here. Githens.
Here. And I don't know who is on as a panelist. I can't see. And so if we could just be shown one time, just to see if it's okay. Thank you. If we could go back to the attendees then, I'd appreciate that a whole lot. Thank you very much. Okay, first thing on our agenda for today is CBU anaerobic digester feasibility study presentation. And I guess we're going to be kicked out. Or, I'm sorry, I'm kicked off as something on my computer. Mr. Gilson, I wasn't referring to you. Sorry about that.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Vic Kelson, Director of Utilities for the City of Bloomington. As everyone here likely knows, we have been working with the Solid Waste Management District for several months on a study of the potential for anaerobic digestion and energy recovery. Initially, we were looking at the prospect of building such a facility at the Blucher Pool wastewater plant. It turns out that it's far better to choose a site at the Dillman Road wastewater plant. We generate a lot of biosolids in our operation. Those biosolids are presently aerobically digested at the Dillman plant with air and then sent to landfill. We would like to not send them to landfill, and we would like to be able to consider generating energy from those biosolids by anaerobically digesting them, collecting the gas, and then either selling the gas onto the pipeline or using a combined heat and power operation, generate electricity to help reduce both the carbon footprint and the cost of operation of the Dillman plant. So the district and the utilities department, utility service board, collaborated on a contract with a large group of contractors, and our team will talk to that a little bit more. This was led by a company called Energy Power Partners. The purpose of the study was to look over not just the mass balance and the energy balance of such a system, but also the finances, the economics, what incentives there are from the federal government and other governments, the different ways the gas could be used, and the overall triple bottom line of such an operation and how it would benefit the residents of the city of Bloomington and Monroe County overall. So I'd like to introduce our two presenters today, Richard Claus of Donahue and Matt Cordial of Kokosing. And they have a presentation for you today that goes over the essential material from the report. And I'm happy to be here today, and thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vic. As Vic was mentioning, our group of consultants was Energy Power Partners. They were the lead, and they were contracted by the City of Bloomington Utilities, as well as the Monroe County Solid Waste District. And Dave Barron, who led our group with Energy Power Partners, unfortunately could not be here this evening, so I'll be presenting. I'm Richard Claus with Donahue and Associates. We're more or less the water, wastewater, anaerobic digestion process part of the equation. Others on our team were Material Matters that assisted in doing a market assessment near and around Bloomington and the city and the county to determine where there was high strength organic waste stock and how that could be potentially brought into the city in different quantities for this assessment. And then finally, but not last, Kokosing Industrial Contractors. And Matt Cordial was here with me today, and he'll be presenting a few slides. So they help drastically with the cost estimation parts of it. Next slide, please. Okay, so agenda overview. So we've got 11 parts, and we'll go through pretty quickly. If it's okay with you, we're planning on about 20 minutes. So we're going to talk very briefly about the options overview, the design basis, the biogas alternatives revenue potential, the funding mechanisms, the capital cost estimates, which Matt will be talking on, the triple bottom line analysis, the schedule, financial model, regional collaboration potential for this program, and then conclusions and findings and next steps. And we'll all be available for questions here at the end. Next slide, please. So options overview. So initially we had 16 different options. And after the draft report that was presented in February with a presentation, we narrowed it down to 10 options that you see before you. And these 10 options vary in basically 3 different criteria. How much high-strength organic waste we have, either none, a low amount, a medium base case amount, or a high amount. And they also vary in funding source, whether this program might be City of Bloomington Utilities self-funded, or whether it might be a P3 private partner, a public partnership. Private, public. Biogas utilization is the other way they vary very quickly. We don't need to go back. And those are combined heat and power, which is basically making electrical energy that could offset the major electrical energy needs of the wastewater treatment plant. Or the other is making a natural gas equivalent to sell back to the pipeline. So that renewable natural gas. Okay, next slide, please. So design basis, and I'm really going to skip here, and I apologize, it's very difficult to see on this screen, but this is a flow schematic, and the next slide is going to be an aerial view of the wastewater treatment plant. And on this flow schematic, at the top, across the top, we have the normal process flow stream for all the wastewater that comes through CBU's Dillman Road wastewater treatment plant. And so in that top part, we're inserting a couple components that I'll talk about here in a moment. And then all the dark black boxes you see at the bottom are solids handling. And so starting on the bottom on the far left, we've got the Blucher pool solids from the other CBU treatment plant coming to the Dillman facility and being unloaded to be part of this. And then after that, we've got the 3 different levels, I'll say, of high strength organic waste coming in, low, medium, or high, and those go in the storage tanks. And then that municipal sludge gets thickened, a better consistency to go into anaerobic digestion. So the high strength organic waste, the municipal waste from Dillman and Blucher would go into anaerobic digestion, and that's where we get the beneficial biogas, the digester gas out of that process. And then from there, again, the 2 different uses of beneficial uses of digester gas, the combined heat and power or the renewable natural gas. And then coming out of that anaerobic digestion process, we have the solids. And right now, Bloomington or Dillman Road has very good belt filter press dewatering for those solids. So part of the plan would be to reuse that infrastructure. So in a nutshell, that is the plan. And where we saw that on a flow schematic a moment ago, we now see that on an aerial view. So essentially, the upper right-hand corner is the new solids handling facilities. And I skipped a little bit, and this is challenging for me without a screen, but there is a part in the top left, top center there that's grit removal and high rate primary filtration. And right now the Dillman Road plant, and this is getting a little bit complicated, but I'll try to simplify it, does not have primary clarification. Some treatment plants have primary treatment and they have secondary, which is biological treatment. and tertiary, which is filters. This plant doesn't have primary right now. What happens is all the energy that comes in through the waste stream, if you don't have that primary clarification, that energy is going on to that biological process. And those are microorganisms that breathe oxygen like us, and like us, they exhale carbon dioxide. So if you think of energy in terms of carbon, that carbon dioxide, we're losing it a lot to the atmosphere as those microbes breathe to process the waste. And then also as they multiply, that's carbon's part of their organic cell structure as well. So instead of that, if we put in these high rate primary filters, we extract that energy before it goes to that aerobic process, and we essentially scalp off that energy and send it directly to anaerobic digestion. So that's part of this process, so we can get more biogas beneficial use out of this process. I think I'm going too far here, so to note in kind of the center of the screen where you see a lot of build infrastructure already, we are reusing extensively 2 very large aerobic digesters, and we're doing that for 3 purposes. That'll be our blended sludge storage, that'll hold our storage after anaerobic digestion, and also gravity taking. So I think we can move on here. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is how these alternatives differ. And again, the alternatives here from a process standpoint are the columns across the top. Do we have no high strength organic waste and just municipal? Do we have a low amount? Do we have a medium amount? Or do we have a high amount? So I won't bore you with all this, but these are the different infrastructure components we might have in different amounts for these 4 categories of process. So next up, the biogas alternatives revenue potential. Okay, so what we see here is the blue line is the energy usage of the Dillman Road wastewater treatment plant today. And the red line, the yellow line, and the green line higher up are the various amounts of high-strength organic waste. Now, I must admit, this is the one slide that did not get updated between draft and final. So that's what the note in green is about. The red line, I believe, is going to vary from where it is right now slightly. But the yellow line and the green line would remain where they are. So what this is telling us is if we took on a larger amount of high-strength organic waste, we could potentially make more energy based off of that high-strength organic waste through combined heat and power than Dillman is utilizing. And they could become a net zero community, net zero treatment plant, make more power than is used. Next slide, please. All right, so biogas alternatives, and this is where Dave Barron is really the expert, and I'm working my way through it best I can. So these are the incentives, right, on whether to take a different pathway with the RIN incentive between the renewable natural gas and the combined heat and power. I think it might be on this. Yeah, okay. So I don't think I'm going to go too deep into the slide if that's all right. But we will be talking later about the RIN incentives and how those work into the financials. Next slide. Okay, so here we have the biogas alternatives, the RIN prices over time. And in this case, we have, I can't read the blue and yellow as well as you may be able to.
We've got closed captioning that's covering that, so I don't know what it says either.
You were looking at that one earlier. So this is the RIN prices, the market fluctuation over time. The part that I'm uncertain about is the difference between the yellow and blue.
There are different categories of credits.
Thank you.
So different categories of credits. You can get credits from combined heat and power. You can also get credits from renewable natural gas or prices.
Yeah, would you repeat that into the microphone because it's being recorded and they don't catch it?
Yeah,
Sorry, no.
I can
One
do
of the
so
two of you,
like.
if you could repeat
Okay,
it,
so
that's all.
what Vic concluded there is these are RIN credit. These are the RIN credits on two different items. One is the combined heat and power, and the other is the renewable natural gas. So they have different RIN credits, and that's what the blue and the yellow are. Next slide, please. All right, so next we want to talk about the potential funding mechanisms. So there's an Inflation Reduction Act funding opportunity. And again, I don't know a tremendous amount, well, here we have it laid out before us, but the key takeaway here is there could be a credit in the value range of 6% to 50% for eligible project costs based on these following criteria. And these following criteria, we've gone through these and we feel we can meet these criteria. So we also feel that we could be up near the 50% side of that credit. And as we get to later, when we talk about schedule towards the end of the presentation, there are timelines associated with moving the project forward such that these credits can be obtained. Okay, so funding mechanisms, whether it's a City of Bloomington Utilities self-funded project or again, a public-private partnership. And these are, there are a lot of factors either way, and these are some of those factors. So if it was CBU self-funded, it could be a 20-year bond, perhaps a 5 to 6% interest rate, could probably be lower than that with state revolving fund loans or WIFIA, which EPA is just going to have a seminar on this coming week on that form of financing. And then also, I'll have to say I'm a little bit rusty on the 48C ITC direct pay available. But then on the other side, with the public-private partnership, it'd be most likely a 20-year contract, 100% equity funded, most likely given the risk profile that we'd have here. Most parties likely seeing a 10% return, and then something similar there with the 48C ITC. So I think the takeaway message there is there's less expense on the left side, CBU funded, and there's more risk perhaps on the left side as well. So there might be some balance there that makes the most sense. Capital cost estimates, and Matt will cover this.
Good afternoon. So I am Matt Cordial with Cocosian Industrial. And our part of this was to basically provide the cost opinion of the project. So as Richard stated, Richard's group went through the analysis and the engineering to determine what would be required as far as systems in place to make these systems work. And then Dave Barron and his group took our information, put it into a cost model, and then ran the analysis to determine and come up with what the cost numbers would be, as far as the different revenue profiles that would be provided by this project at the end of the day. The screen you see in front of you shows the combined heat and power options of the none, low, medium, and high strength organic waste input into the plant. And the breakdown primarily goes into the different components of the project, most of which would be required on all levels, whether it's none, low, high, or medium. But there are certain components of this, said number of anaerobic digesters, which in the high component you would need 3. On all other components you would need 2. And then as far as the number of high strength organic waste storage tanks you would need. So in the low case, we would need 2 storage tanks. The medium would be 3 storage tanks. The high would be 4. That's what the analysis is based on the number of high strength organic waste that's being brought into the plant. The way we look at this as far as the cost opinion from a contractor standpoint is to evaluate real-time cost data. So we're using local wage rates, real-time equipment pricing, unit prices, historical data, and everything that we know with our knowledge base to come up with as accurate of an estimate as we can that can get inputted into this model to help basically show what these financial numbers would look like at the end of the day with all 4 scenarios. Go ahead, Tom, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So this one is the same basic scenario, but this is for renewable natural gas. So in EPP's financial model, they throw in all of the cost benefits associated with renewable natural gas, which at the end of the day changes some of the numbers a little bit, but the base scope of work is primarily the same. But instead of having combined heat and power equipment, you have renewable natural gas equipment in its place. All of the other components of the project stay the same. You can go to the next slide, Tom. All right, and I'm going to let Richard talk a little bit about the triple bottom line.
Thank you, Matt. One thing I'll add there is there were two projects that were listed, and it was those process flow stream projects that are actually on City of Bloomington's capital improvement program. So those might be funded separately. So that's listed on that table. So yeah, then the triple bottom line analysis, there are many societal benefits, environmental benefits with this type of project. And so our team went through I believe both the city and county's goals when it comes to sustainability and carbon diversion and so forth. And through that, we see alignment in these different areas. And I don't know if I want to read through each and every one of them, but I'll certainly hit some highlights here. So as far as the climate action plan goals, you know, we'd have over 15,000 metric tons of CO2. Yeah, this is getting beyond me from the various emissions that would be reduced with this program. And then as far as one goal was increase landfill solid waste diversion by 30% of 2018 values, which would be a 26,500 ton reduction in that waste. And then there'd be a minimum of 1,000 CBU tons of biosolids that be diverted potentially if we went from landfill to a beneficial use of those biosolids. And then cities stated sustainability action plan goals, and I might not hit all of them here in the interest of time. However, like item C there, reduce energy use associated with treating and transferring water to wastewater by 10% of 2018 values. 12% reduction in bleacher pool existing processes, net reduction in Dillman Road energy use of self-generated power. So that goes back to that slide we saw before, and depending on the levels, the medium, high strength organic waste or high amounts, could be enough to potentially offset that energy use entirely. So there are other goals here as well. In the interest of time, I think we'll move on to the next slide, please. So other parts, the social benefits of this type of project. So job creation, dozens of construction jobs, projected full 5-time operation positions after the program like this was up and running. Sustainable organics disposal facility for local businesses, competitive alternatives to landfills, potential to use as economic development tool, and then community education. CVU certainly leading by example with a program like this. Facilitate climate action plan goals of educate, motivate, and empower the public to achieve waste reduction and diversion. Next slide. So schedule, and this does fit in, and I figured out as I went here that 48, that acronym I was reading does pertain to the credits. So so this schedule is based upon that. So the project would need to start construction by December 31st, 2024, the end of next year, to qualify for that ITC. And while I don't specifically know that acronym, that is that potential 50% match on the funds. IRS has specific guidance on that, what that definition of start of construction is. You could perhaps procure large pieces of equipment, but it's more than just a ceremony. For that definition, some money would have to be spent by that time period. And then the most common ways to achieve this would include, well, I just started through those. So item 2 there is spending at least 5% of the total project cost on equipment by that deadline. So there are various ways that could be met. Next slide, please. Financial model. Okay, next slide. All right. And this one, I believe, I started my clock about 5 minutes early, or late, I'll say, but I think I have a few minutes left here. So I'm going to spend a little time on this one. So financial model summary conclusions. CBU does not process enough wastewater to make anaerobic digestion financially self-sustaining without support from increased rates. So we looked at that case with no high-strength organic waste at all, right? And it just, that alone, it does not work out. The project will need to be fully capitalize on available investment tax credits. That's the 50% match I was talking about, and environmental credit value to be financially self-sustaining. The project has the potential to reach economy of scale necessary to be financially self-sustaining if sufficient volumes of the high-strength waste bearing enough biomethane potential and tip fee revenues are secured. So basically, the larger the program gets, the better the paybacks become. Item number 3, private party financing the project under a public-private partnership, build, operate, transfer type situation will have a higher cost of capital than CBU and will require CBU paying more than its current baseline practices to enable the private party to achieve its desired returns, therefore suggesting that CBU consider its options for self-funding the project. However, it is also recognized there's more risk in self-funding. So private entities still likely would be needed to be involved to execute much of the scope that CBU does not have the current capabilities to self-perform. So there are certain parts of the program they may need other expertise in. And then item number 4, there's significant amount of both regulatory and market risk in undertaking a project of this nature. As assumptions are fully met, the project may require an increase. If assumptions are not fully met, the project may require an increase in rates at a future date to sustain operations. Conversely, if assumptions are exceeded, the project could turn a former cost center into a revenue-generating asset. So the results of the financial model. And again, we started with those 16 alternatives, and then after the draft, we narrowed it down to 10. That's why these are not numbered sequentially. And I'd like to point out numbers 7 and 8. So 7 is the combined heat and power, CBU funded with a baseline or medium amount of high-strength organic waste. And over a 20-year net positive value analysis, it would have a positive payback. Item 8 is very similar, but now instead of a medium base amount of high-strength organic waste, perhaps that project could grow into the high-strength amount. So as Matt Cordial mentioned, the difference between those is like build 2 anaerobic digesters, for instance, initially, and then someday build a third as the program or the grows, which could be an option. And then lastly, on the far right side, there's the RNG CBU funded high-strength organic waste. But the next slide, we're going to see these in numerical form, and there are a couple more that I wanted to bring highlight too. Next slide, please. So this is the same information, just no longer graphically. And so the ones I highlighted before are 7 and 8, which have that positive return. And then also case 16 has a positive return. But then we've also highlighted cases 3 and 4, which are the medium amount of high-strength organic waste and the high amount, 3 and 4 respectively. And this time a public party, a P3 arrangement instead of CBU self-funded. But again, the combined heat and power is what's highlighted there. Next slide, please. So regional collaboration. So as I started, this program was funded by yourselves, the Monroe County Solid Waste District, as well as City of Bloomington Utilities. Other potential partners we thought about along the way, or have been thought about in some respects, or City of Columbus, Indiana, if they should be interested. And Vic's more familiar than I, but I understand there's a maybe city-to-city partnership there, or some kind of arrangement. So partnering with neighboring communities to increase the scale of the project spread the costs, may be advantageous avenue to explore should the project prove infeasible for any of those one entities. Next slide. So conclusions and findings. And you've been patient with me so far, so I'll go ahead and read this last slide, please. So we started out, as Vic mentioned, looking at the smaller of the two CBU plants, Blucher Pool. But we quickly determined Dillman Road is the preferred location for various reasons. Then implementing grit removal and the high rate primary filtration that I mentioned at Dillman Road will benefit both this project in terms of resource recovery, but then it also has some benefit to the existing wastewater plant. So I think financially those things could be shared, and parts of them are in that capital improvement program of CBUs right now. And then item 3, volumes of high strength organic waste in the region can support meaningful tip fee revenue and increased biogas production. We haven't talked much about Material Matters, the part of our team that did the market assessment, but their work proves that there is a good amount of this waste in the area that could be brought to such a project. And then viable biogas use alternatives include combined heat and power, as I've mentioned, and renewable natural gas, with the combined heat and power having a strong economic potential. So far, and I want to stress that, we've been looking at Class B land application as a more sustainable and viable alternative than the landfilling of the residual biosolids that CBU performs currently. However, this program could easily evolve into a Class A biosolids application if that's what is desired. So if there's interest in that, we could talk about some of those, what that might look like as well. And then, so item 6, the recent tax credit legislation can offset up to 50% of the eligible project cost. We're confident in that. The project has the potential to be cost neutral with sufficient high strength organic waste volumes, tax credits, and environmental credit value realized. The Resource Recovery Program will directly address at least 10 different goals set forth in both the City of Bloomington's Climate Action Plan, Sustainability Plan, and I'll add the counties as well, from what I know of it. I don't know about 10 goals, though, on that one. So, with that, I think our next slide is if there are any questions. Oh, next steps. So next steps is, today we're presenting to yourselves. And then after this, I understand that we give a presentation to the City of Bloomington Utilities Service Board, and that might be April 24th. Thereafter, there may be a public hearing that I think is currently a to-be-determined date. And then CBU, next step is to determine, different portions of the project. Are there further planning efforts that are needed here? What might that project delivery method look like, and various procurement options if they want to move forward with the project. I apologize for exceeding my time, but we're at the conclusion now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Would you take some questions?
Absolutely, yes.
And I'm not directing these at any one person, and ask my colleagues if they have any that they'd like to start with.
I'll wait for a little bit.
Okay. Mayor, do you have any?
I really appreciate the work on this. This is something that we've been trying to look at for a number of years, and this is the most detailed, intense look we've done. I think it's an enormous opportunity to do some really positive things for the community as a whole around climate, energy use, as well as landfill application. Waste energy is pretty exciting. There's a lot to digest, as it were, in this, and I know if you're like me, you depend upon a lot of technical advice and expertise too, but I think it's a really interesting and important opportunity. So knowing the next step is a utility board looking at this, more public comment on this, I think is great getting feedback from folks. I appreciate more engineers looking at it and advising us. And the only thing I'll ask about, and I don't know who this goes to, I personally would get more comfort if we felt like there was some, if possible, some private partnership that would have some skin in the game too, some equity, some upside and downside, if you will, because I'm not saying that's a game starter or stopper for me, but it just helps give a parallel. We have a lot of public goals, but it would be helpful from my perspective to see a way to structure it that we could have some private sector partnerships that would have, you know, incentives for this to succeed as well as much as we do.
And I can think of a couple of things right off the bat that would be related to private partners. First of all, waste haulers and people who are trying to get rid of high-strength organic waste. That's like brewery waste, that's dairy waste, that's other kinds of high-strength waste that come from food, fats, oils, and grease from restaurants. Food waste can be processed in a system like this. So I think one of the first places you might look for partners would be in the people who are actually in the business of getting rid of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that would be potentially waste haulers and also producers and generators. Another opportunity that's there is that from the perspective of CVU, the analysis has all been done on the basis of generating Class B biosolids. If we wanted to generate Class A biosolids, there's a market for that out there, but that's pretty much beyond the scope of what the utilities department would want to do. But the potential would be there for a partner who was interested in taking on that composting operation and moving forward with a Class A kind of product. So that those opportunities are there. There's also the possibility of having an investor who just wants to build the whole thing. The challenge for us there is that in order for that to be, well, how do I say this? The likelihood of that project, if it were entirely privately funded, the likelihood of it making money is much lower unless you can get a lot of outside waste coming in. On the other hand, it reduces our risk. So you'd want to balance those two things. And overall, one of the questions that I tend to ask about this is the city does have goals, the county does have goals for climate action, emissions reduction, and all these other things. Nothing we do to achieve those kinds of goals is going to happen for free. They're all going to cost money. So one of the questions that I have is, even if it doesn't make a profit, which it'd be wonderful if it did, but even if it didn't break even in terms of the cost and benefits financially, do the social benefits and offset some of that? And also, is this the least expensive way to achieve the climate goals that we've set as a community? And that probably should enter into the calculation as well when you're thinking about whether to pursue something like this, even with a private partner.
So I wish I understood all this much, much better. I feel like a novice at some of this, but how much high-strength organic waste does CBU currently produce?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Well, then.
It's in the tens of thousands of pounds per month. We get oil, or we get fats, oils, and grease delivered to the Dillman plant. We don't treat it. It sits in a lagoon and basically oxidizes in the sunshine. So I can get you the exact number and I'll email it to you tomorrow.
So where does that fit in terms of the volume that's described in this report? Does that fall into the high, medium, low?
It's a high strength waste. So it goes in as a high strength waste.
But the volume of it?
Oh, the volumes are low, but the strength is high.
Right, okay,
Yes.
right, yeah. So if we're not producing enough to make this economically feasible locally, you've already mentioned, or was Richard mentioned perhaps something like this, Columbus. but where would other high-strength organic wastes come from and how is that going to come to us? Is it going to be filtered? Is it going to have these other processes done to it first? And how does that impact the cost? Could you go to a mic? I'm sorry. Could you go to a microphone? That's all.
Well, I can comment on
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
The way that would happen is already at the Dillman plant, we turn away wastes, high-strength wastes that come from outside of Monroe County. So if you're from Bedford or any surrounding community, we don't take yours because we just don't have the space for it. We have no benefit of getting it. So companies that were hauling waste oil from another community could bring that waste to us. And one of the reasons that the Dillman Road facility is preferable for a system like this is because it's next to the highway, right? It's very easy to get there as opposed to twisty roads down Sample Road to get there. So it's very beneficial to be next to the highway. And Material Matters did a study to look at what kind of wastes are available or around within an hour of Bloomington. I believe that's the dark blue, right? Yeah. The dark blue is. Yeah. And they reached out to some of those facilities. Many of those facilities aren't really interested in engaging in a conversation until they're pretty sure we're going to be moving ahead with something like this. But these things are built in other parts of the state. Really between Indianapolis and Evansville, we would be the only place in the middle. So if you think in terms of an hour's drive time, that's probably the distance you would want to think about as being possibly in our market.
So where within the state are there other anaerobic digesters? Do you know?
There are lots of them in northern Indiana where there are dairy farms and lots of confined animal feed operations. There's an anaerobic digester. Evansville has one. Fort Wayne, West Lafayette.
I was just going to add there are many plants that have anaerobic digestion. However, there's a distinction between plants that have anaerobic digestion and those that receive high-strength organic waste to their anaerobic digesters. So in that regard, West Lafayette is one of those. They've been taking, I think, food scraps from Purdue University and other locations nearby for a while now. I do not believe Evansville's one. Fort Wayne is certainly one, and there are others scattered about. We could get back with you with a more comprehensive list on that if you'd like.
Thank you. So more questions. The output from the digester, these Class B land applications, how much sort of heavy metal and dangerous kinds of metals are in our current waste stream that would impact the quality of that solid waste?
Yeah, we have to test for that regularly now for landfill disposal. I can get you the precise numbers, but yeah, they're low in our case. The other concern that's emerging is something called PFAS, PFAS. These are the fluoroalkyl molecules that are associated with certain fire foams and other chemical precursors. We've tested for this in both our wastewater and our drinking water and our raw and finished water at all of our facilities. And when we tested, we had non-detect at the time. But we're doing another round of sampling right now to try and update that. But down the road, I think that one of the things that we want to really be monitoring for is the presence of and any kind of imported waste. We'd want to be monitoring for metals and PFAS especially.
So if I remember right, in sort of interim report, there was an indication that for the Class B land application, we'd need something like 500 acres to offload for farming. Is that, we don't have a lot of 500-acre farms in Monroe County, given our topography. Is that still what is being considered, or will that then just go, because it's so much less volume, will that just go into a landfill, or what's going to happen?
It can be hauled. So we would be looking for partners in the area. There's not a lot, as you say, there's not a lot of opportunities here, but there's also Morgan County isn't too far away. And so we would certainly have to look at that as we start looking at this in more detail.
Okay. Is there any kind of danger for people that might transport the high-strength organic waste if there were accidents? Or, I mean, we've all been made aware of what happens when railroad cars derail. Is that ever going to be an issue?
Well, there's always a risk when you're hauling waste. That would be certainly something to examine, but the fact is they're going to haul it somewhere. And so hauling it to a place that's relatively close by as compared to, some of this stuff gets hauled hundreds of miles depending on the circumstances. So we would be choosing tipping fees that put us at a location in the market where we would get as much of that as we could of the good quality stuff.
It's largely food waste.
Yeah, that's true. And it's mostly food waste, food-related waste. So it's not like we're calling hazardous waste. We're pulling fats and grease and vegetables and things like that.
So the output, whether it's a Class B or the Class A land application, is that going to have, are we going to be in competition with local companies that do composting?
Well, presumably, if we're doing composting, if you wanted to compost the Class B waste to make Class A waste, that's an opportunity for a partner to do that operation. That's not really it's a case where we could, if we can find a partner who wants to take the Class B waste and continue to process it to Class A, that's certainly something that would be a business opportunity for somebody locally or regionally.
That maybe I didn't state my question very, very clearly. It's more like, with what you produce, even if it's a Class B, are you going to drive any local composters out of business?
No,
Okay.
I can't believe that we would.
Okay, so then bottom line, what kind of cost are we talking about? What's the magnitude of this? I know you don't have a final number, but
It's in the around 50 million or a little bit plus or minus, depending on how big a facility it ends up being.
is that 50 million just the half that we would be responsible for if we can get the 50% credit?
Okay.
Or is the
So-
total cost 100 million with us paying 50 million or? No.
No. To build the whole thing is between 50 and 60 million dollars to build the whole thing. Some of the stuff that would have to be built would be eligible for this investment tax credit. And that would be paid if CBU did the project, that would be paid to us.
Right.
Some of that $50 million is wrapped up also in projects that we're already planning to do at our plant because we need them for other reasons. So some of the aspects of the project are things that we've already planned on capitalizing. Some of it would be eligible for the credits. The rest of it would have to be paid for out of rates somehow.
And if this were a public-private kind of enterprise, would that impact the amount that we can get back from the government or from other?
Yeah, it would, because we would be paying them for their service and providing this.
Would the public-private enterprise be eligible for the 50% for the part? I'm saying, does the private part of it make them less eligible for some of the government?
The project would be eligible. I think one of the aspects of the project, or one aspect of it, would not be eligible. I think that was there's an additional benefit for municipalities, I think, based on whether you're paying prevailing wages for the workers.
Thank you. Thank you for taking all my questions. I feel like I've grilled you. Did you have any questions now, Commissioner Jones?
No, I had a feeling that probably I wouldn't once you were done, but I will say that it would take a whole lot for me to be at all comfortable with land application of Class B outputs. That in a community, admittedly a transient community that doesn't have a terribly long memory, but there are a lot of people here who still remember when PCBs seemed to be absolutely fine to put all over our county. And we're still paying for that now. And we just don't know what we're going to find in the future. This is a risk that, to me, is too great to take.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the questions. As I think it from this board's responsibility and our mission is to minimize, our mission is to minimize landfill use, right? That's kind of our core.
The core of the mission is to reduce the amount of material going to final disposal, which would be landfill or incineration.
Yeah. And so from our perspective, I think it's trying to look at it from that lens. How much would this project do to improve that? I think I really appreciate the collaboration on helping look at this study. I think we haven't put in our mission, I guess, kind of the direct, what is our role in climate change, more largely sustainability, et cetera. But one of the things I'll want to understand is if this is built, what are some of the outcomes that we'd see? And if it's not built, what are some of those outcomes? Where are the high strength wastes going? What's happening with them, both in terms of land application, landfills, as well as carbon impact? But I think it's really interesting and exciting. It's hard work, it's complicated. And again, I'll want to be talking to more people about it, but I'm really appreciative to learn about it and of your work on it, and look forward to hearing more from your boards of directors and the public and such. But I know it's something that's been thought about for a long time, and really appreciate the progress. I think it's exciting.
Thank you. Are we ready to let Richard and Matt and Vic off the hook at this point? Thank you all for being here today.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so now I guess we go back to the rest of our agenda. I will note for the record that the Executive Committee executive session notes from February 27th, 2023, and the Executive Committee meeting minutes from February 27th, 2023 have been included in your packet for your review. And then those have been approved by the Executive Committee. Then I'll go on to the approval of the March 9th Board of Directors meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to accept these?
Move approval of the March 9th meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
I wasn't there, but I'll second it.
Thank you. Thank you. We have had City Council person Isabel Piedmont Smith go over these, and she goes through them in fine detail. So I'm sure that yes, I have reviewed them as well. So if there's no comments or corrections, call for a vote.
Jones,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Swafford,
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Hamilton.
If I abstain, do we still pass them?
No.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will now go on to the Comptroller's report. First, cash flows.
Hello. For cash flow summary for the operating account, we are still reconciling and tabulating the March 31 year-to-date balance. We will provide a current balance as soon as possible. For money market savings, we have $462.78. For closure bond debt, we have For capital, we have $45,541.36. And for landfill post-closure, we have $739,897.76. Are there any questions about cash flows?
Any questions? Mayor? No? Okay. No questions?
Okay. For payroll and claims approval, and that is on page 17 of the packet. There's a breakdown of what we are looking for approval today on, and that would be $238,498.08, and that is for payroll and claims.
Are there questions about the payroll and claims that are shown here in the? Okay. Do I have a motion then to accept the cash flow, to accept the payroll and claims report?
Move to accept the payroll and claims report.
Second.
Thank you. That's in a total amount of $238,498.08. Again, any questions or comments? Then, Ms. McBeth, call for.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask for a language clarification. Was the motion to approve or to accept?
Approve. Sorry. Do we accept? Is that what we do instead of approve?
Commissioner Jones, is the motion to approve payroll and claims as presented?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't pay that much attention. I will move that we approve payroll and claims as presented.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to get to them.
Second still?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we could go on to,
Are we ready for a vote?
yes.
Swafford?
Yes.
Hamilton?
Yes.
Githens?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Resolution 2023-03, Monroe County Landfill Financial Assurance.
For us staff, at least at this point, this is an annual housekeeping measure. We're required by the state to update our post-closure financial assurance on an annual basis. We have historically used what's called the local government option on this and asked Monroe County to make that demonstration on our behalf, which the county has graciously done for a number of years now. So that's what this resolution authorizes staff to make that request from the Monroe County Council to again make that demonstration. I would note, unfortunately, for the second time ever and the second year in a row, the amount has gone up just due to the current economic environment and the period of inflation. Inflation is something that has to be factored in to those post-closure cost estimates.
Are there questions or comments from anyone on the board? I know when you talked with us in the executive committee meeting, you indicated that we have not really ever had a problem. We've never had to draw on any of this. This is just reduces some of our financial responsibility.
Yes, to date, we have been able to absorb or factor in the post-closure monitoring and maintenance cost into our annual budget. One time, I can recall one time that we had to use some of the post-closure trust fund money when we were ordered by the state to install some additional groundwater wells. Just because of the cost of doing that was something we used those funds for. And as we tell the council every year, we obviously have that fund that's upwards of $750,000, and we would always exhaust those funds before ever asking the county for any assistance. So if there are no questions about this, then I call for a vote on Resolution 2023-03 on the Monroe County Landfill Financial Assurance that you will.
Oh, we didn't do a motion? Okay,
Yes, we need a
thank
motion.
you. You're more awake than I am, I'm sorry.
Well, but I
Here.
don't.
Here's where, I went ahead and printed this out for myself, so, yes.
Move approval of resolution 2023-03, Monroe County landfill financial assurance.
Second.
Thank you. We now have a motion in a second. And you will then take this to the county council for their approval, correct?
Yes,
After we've done
staff
this.
has the agenda request prepared. We were just waiting on the resolution to be approved so we could submit that. And we'll try to take that to the council at their May 9th meeting.
Thank you. Now call for a vote. Thank you, Mr. McGrath.
Githens,
Yes,
Swafford,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Motion passes.
thank you. Now we'll go on to resolution 2023-04 for additional appropriation.
Yeah, and I am going to start by pointing out a typographical error in the memo that is on page 44 of the packet. I guess the second full paragraph of that memo that starts the F-250 recently, in the second line of that, the welder that did the repair work on that frame advised that this would not be a permanent solution, not that it would be a permanent solution. That's a distinct difference in my mind, and I apologize for the error on that. But as you can see in the memo, again, we're talking about one truck that is going on 14 years old. 2024 models are getting ready to come out, and another that's going on 16 years old. And the F-250 in particular, the frequency and the cost of the repairs to keep that truck on the road are becoming quite excessive, as you can see in the memo, and with the situation on the bed and the costs, or I guess the repairs that have been recommended to us related to the front end of the cab on that truck, we're now getting to a point where there's a reliability and a safety issue for our staff, as well as to have that vehicle on the road in particular. And the F-150, not quite in as bad a shape, but still it is aging and it is showing that age. It is, again, it's 16 years old, and it is something that we were already starting to look at replacing as well. As you can see in the memo, staff did do some research on the local used truck market, and given what we use these trucks for, to find a truck that had the features that we needed to be able to do the work, we were looking at spending roughly $35,000 for a truck that was going to be 7 to 8 years old with a minimum of 75,000 miles on it. And so staff got some quotes from local dealers for new vehicles. And again, thought that given the age that we were looking at in the used market and the price difference, it would be a better option to purchase new vehicles that would have full warranties with them, and zero mileage, that many more years of use out of them. So, and again, what we're asking for is permission to go request additional appropriation from the Monroe County Council. For the council's purposes, it's in an amount of $93,935, which is the sum of the two price quotes that are attached to the resolution in the packet.
So for clarification, you're not asking the county council to dip into county funds. You're asking them to approve use of solid waste district?
Out of district,
Right.
yeah, out of
Yes.
district reserve funds,
Right.
yes.
Yes, thank you.
But because the council has the binding authority on our budget, they have to approve the additional appropriation.
Right. So questions or comments? Yes.
Thanks. Just a couple. One, I don't know, do you need a little room? Like if these are the two minimum quotes, if anything changes, I would be fine if you gave yourselves a little wiggle room, but I don't know how you do things. But anyway,
Well,
just asking that.
If Tech Services could, if they doesn't already give Mr. Polson the ability to speak to this, he's the one that was worked on getting the quotes. But my understanding is the quotes in the packet are from Curry Auto Center, and if we act on them in the near future, those are firm quotes.
Okay. Second, and I know it's tough getting vehicles these days, and it's tough getting the kind that we want. I'm fine with this. Do we have any policy on electric vehicles or the movement toward more fuel efficient and hybrid vehicles?
We do not have such a policy. It is something that has been discussed, but for what these vehicles are and what they're used for, to get an electric truck that would do this work, I'm not sure that it's out there, and it would cost substantially more money.
Yeah, I know that's true. We have a lot of, I don't know how many vehicles, we have 700 vehicles or something like that in the city, and they vary dramatically. But having a policy that has goals and I think would be appropriate to think about for whatever range of vehicles we have of moving toward lower carbon impact vehicles would be something to think about. I'm fine with this today, but one other thing that staff has, it's been a while, but has previously discussed, we don't actually have a written fleet program or fleet policy. And that's something that we probably need to take up as well. And that would be certainly something that could be written into that policy.
I think we should also look at a fleet replacement policy and start to schedule so that we have a better idea of when we're spending money, I guess. Yeah. So do I have a motion to approve resolution 2023-04?
Move to approve resolution 2023-04 for an additional appropriation.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any other further discussion? Is there any public input on this? See none, I'll ask Mr. McGlasson for roll call, please.
Hamilton,
yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Swafford,
Yes.
Githens.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I have a quick question. There's nothing else on the schedule that needs a vote. Is that correct? These are reports? There's nothing else on our agenda that will need a
No, there's nothing else that requires a vote on the agenda.
Thank you. Okay, then let's move on to the multifamily residential complex composting pilot project update. Sorry.
Yeah, this was just an update for the board of this project. You can see we have continued to work with the city's Economic Sustainable Development Office. We are still working out the details of the funding agreement, but did want to go ahead and get the request for proposals that you can see it's beginning on page 55 of the packet is included. That was issued on March the 31st. We've asked for proposals to be due by April the 24th. Do have one entity that has responded and asked some questions, so we anticipate that there'll be at least one entity that will be submitting a proposal. We'll see if we hear back from any of the rest. And the plan would be to bring those proposals to the board at their May meeting for consideration.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions on this from anyone? Okay, then let's go on to the Orange Bag program cost review.
Yeah, just another update for the board based on some previous discussions we've had about what some of the retailers were charging for orange bags that was potentially in excess of the fees established by the board in the fee resolution, which led some to discussions and question about some vendors contacted me in response to a letter that was sent out asking about the discount that they're currently provided and whether or not the district had or could consider increasing that discount due to some of their increased costs that they've experienced over the past couple of years. So we did put together some data we get in the memo on page 64 of the packet. And you can see, the program is certainly on sound financial footing at this time. We do have some known cost increases that are coming up The big one being the cost of the bags themselves. There is a pretty good price adjustment clause in that based on the current CPI, which is not the best number right now. So we did put this together, did review this with the executive committee at their last meeting, and the executive committee decided that that they didn't see a need to make any adjustment to that vendor discount at this time, but did not rule it out in the future. So just bringing that update to the board. Certainly be happy to entertain any thoughts or questions, related to that discount or the orange bag program in general.
Questions or comments from my colleagues on the board? I was in the meeting, the executive meeting, so was part of that initial discussion. So if there's no questions or comments, one of the things that we found interesting was that the Kroger stores are the ones that are selling the bags the most. That was just intriguing. I hadn't realized.
The volume sold by the various vendors, retailers that do sell them for us, what was some interesting data. I would note, it was brought up in the executive committee meeting, the Kroger Seminary Square, not to single them out, but they did go through a period where they did not order any bags, but they did just in the past month, did order some. But to me, it also makes sense that they would be one of the lower volume resellers, given where they're located in relation to the people most likely to use those rural sites that have the orange bags.
Yes, thank you. Okay, it's time for the CAC report, and we have Mr. Winio with us. Thank you. It's good to see you.
Indeed. Likewise. Afternoon, board members. As you can see in the report, there is not much to report. We did not have our meeting last month. I will just point out that the next page in the packet, 67, is just a copy of the minutes that were taken from the first attempted joint CAC board meeting. They have not been approved yet. They were going to be in the March meeting, but they will likely be approved before the next joint meeting, which is going to be taking place next week, because the CAC meeting immediately precedes it. So there may be some small changes, but just wanted to make it available for reference. CAC activity is really pending this next joint meeting, which is when we'll be discussing the 5-year management plan and then setting up sort of a year strategy to act on that plan. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
So our next proposed joint meeting is what date and time? I know I've got it on my calendar.
Indeed. The date will be Thursday, April 20th. It will be at 6:30 p.m. for the joint portion, and it will be in room,
100B.
100B in the
North Showers.
Yeah, Showers Building North.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That's good. Okay, we're ready for department reports. So, Mr. McGlasson?
And I will follow up on Mr. Winnie real fast, just to make the board aware of that. For the minutes that are included for that last joint meeting, even though there wasn't a quorum of the board present, there was a quorum of the CAC present. So legal counsel advised that the CAC should produce minutes for that meeting. So we had them do that. I guess I'll try to get through kind of fast. The legislative update. You can see the Senate Bill 33, which is the solar panel decommissioning and disposal study, has been forwarded to the governor at this point. After the Senate concurred with the House amendments. So that, again, that is just a study, but that study will occur. And it'll be really interesting to see what that comes back with. That's certainly something that Bloomington has a lot of solar panels, a number of communities around the state. It is something that they'll need to deal with in the coming years. So, I guess one other, I guess two other bills that do want to point out. House Bill 1167, which has to do with the live streaming and archiving of meetings. The way that bill currently sits. This board would be subject to that rule, that law, because we meet in here where the county council meets. I think it's either the commissioners or the county council, but if you meet in the room where the financial or the legislative body of the county meets, then you're subject to that. The CAC meeting in room 100B would not be subject to that rule. But it does look like it's going to go through. There's still some questions hanging out there. Detail things like, does closed captioning have to be on the archived video? There's also something in there about having minutes attached with when you post the archived video, but you're not going to have the minutes, approved minutes the day after the meeting. So there's some details, some questions still to be worked out with that, but that is looking like it's going to move forward. And then the other one that I wanted to point out, House Bill 1512, Solid Waste Matters. What this bill is doing is basically continuing a pilot program that was started a couple of years ago to try to expand recycling efforts in Marion County. And they're extending that. They're adding more money to it, which certainly is not something that necessarily we should be opposed to. I guess the concern from the Association of Solid Waste Districts is they're taking that money from an existing grant program at items, so that's decreasing the amount of grant awards that have been available to the whole state in previous years. That's kind of the heartache on that, but the intent of the bill is certainly good. It's an effort to increase recycling in an area that because it does not have a solid waste district, has been behind some of the other areas of the state. So moving on from the legislation, we'll announce a familiar name. Kathy Martin has agreed to take the office manager position. Recently opened up with Connie Hudson's retirement, and she is scheduled to start on Monday. So we'll be excited to welcome her back. And we've been working with the county's emergency management agency with the debris cleanup from the tornado in the northwest part of the county. We're going to do some collection of appliances, household hazardous waste, electronics, things that shouldn't be going into the dumpsters that have been provided. We actually did our first run up there this afternoon. Did not collect a whole lot, but our staff talked with a lot of the residents that were out there working on their properties. So I think there was just some communication difficulties, letting the residents know that we were coming out and what we were doing. As a lot of them told our staff, they don't have a mailbox, they don't have a house, they didn't have a way to receive information. So we did let them know that we're coming. We're at least going to do that for the next two Thursdays. So, I'm sorry, Mayor Hamilton, can I get a signature real fast?
He needs to sig that.
Sorry about that. So we're certainly excited to be able to help the residents, help the county with the disaster recovery, and hopefully we can get a lot of things that would be difficult for them to otherwise dispose of or put cause potential hazards to the area if they didn't get taken care of. We are currently negotiating a host fee agreement with Rumpke Waste and Recovery for the new facility here in Monroe County. And the most recent information I have, they are looking at a May 16th opening for that facility, and it's our intent to have a final version of the host fee agreement to bring to the board for consideration at the May meeting in advance of that facility opening. So we would have that in place when the facility opens. I guess lastly, we're making a change for our Earth Day this year. The last few years, we've done compost bins and rain barrels. This year, we've decided to go back to tree seedlings. We'd had a number of requests from residents. They missed us doing the tree seedlings, which is what we were doing before the compost bins and rain barrels. So this, again, this year, in recognition of Earth Day and Arbor Day, Earth Day being April the 22nd, Arbor Day April the 28th, we'll be distributing tree seedlings at our administrative building between April 19th and April the 22nd. We'll also have doing some partnering with Canopy Bloomington this year for the event, so they will have volunteers on site to provide guidance and some assistance to people in helping them select the right type of seedling for the area that they have to plant the tree, and give them some guidance on how to best plant and care for the tree so that it can flourish once it's in the ground. And with that, I would answer any questions.
No.
Well, actually, do you know what the different varieties of trees are?
I do not off the top of my head. I apologize.
We
but
got an email.
No calorie pear. I know that.
Yeah. I think that one was a pecan tree and the other was the
that's right.
choke
Choke
cherry.
cherry.
Choke cherry.
That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot. Sorry.
I did read that one.
Yeah, I did too. Just didn't remember.
Tech services, we're going to need Joey Long to be able to speak and share video.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Mr. Long.
I will start with the recycling and reuse. We're currently investigating plastic bag recycling again. We've reached out to a local vendor that we currently use. We're in negotiations, talking to them about recycling bail and plastic bags and sending to them again. We're waiting on a list of restrictions, what they want and don't want, what can and can't be recycled, and to see if it's feasible for us to start recycling grocery sacks and, you know, your bread bags, Ziploc bags, all that stuff. We just currently waiting on a list for that. So we're hoping that we can start offering that recycling once again. The hazardous materials, electronics recyclers, International Inc. has reached out to us, and there will be a fee increased to start recycling or to keep recycling all of our electronics. We've looked over the fees. It's not going to make a huge difference, but we are reaching out, doing our due diligence with other vendors that recycle electronics in our area to compare prices and everything, to see what makes the most sense for us moving forward, and to make sure we are offering the most we can to the public. And the rural recycling centers are operating as normal. It's warm outside. People starting to really keep them busy right now. And that's what I have. So if you have any questions, I can answer the best that I can for you guys.
Questions or comments?
I just want to say that's so exciting to hear about the possibility of recycling plastic bags again. I think you're going to make a lot of people very happy with that.
Yeah. Originally, when we stopped, they had a bunch of restrictions, but it sounds like they removed some. So we're hoping that we can offer it again. I'm just waiting on the list right now.
I look forward to that.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I'm excited about this also. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Now we got our tonnage too here. Yes.
Be Mr. Polson next.
Yes, Mr. Paulson.
Hello, Lee Paulson, Landfill and Compliance Director. The report I submitted pretty much gives you an idea of what we've been doing the past month. We're getting ready for the May 2023 groundwater sample event, so I'm getting everything checked out, in line, and ordered that we need for that. The only thing I'd kind of really highlight is thank you guys for approving the purchase money for those new vehicles, because those are going to definitely be on the road a lot, and they're on the road a lot now as it is, but we just need to upgrade so that that one's not in the shop every time. So we're getting a lot more activity on our Adopt a Road, and some community members have stepped up and cleaning up the areas close to their homes and stuff like that. So we're working with them to pick up the trash that they've picked up. So there's quite a list on that when you get to the Adopt a Road section and the different things. And this month has continued with that so far for April. So a lot of good things happening. There's a lot of stuff happening. So, but you guys have any questions, I'll answer.
Questions or comments? I was thrilled to see that you had 16 Adopt a Road cleanups completed in March. That's so much better than over the winter.
Yeah, I mean, the weather got nice, and everybody wanted to go outside, and they did. And they just, they picked it up. So we were pretty busy.
I really appreciate that. Right? Oh my gosh. And your leachates?
Leachate is doing what it does. We're treating as much as we can. We're doing like 6 cycles a day. Treating pretty good. The only really issue, that's not really an issue, it's just seems like the only rain events we get right now are 3 to 5 inches at a time, and that's just difficult to deal with, so we have to haul when that happens. And when the weather's like this right now, it's a lot better because we can run our cycles pretty good, and it, taking care of it as it's being generated, I guess. So, but we're taking care of it.
I would expect nothing less from you. Huh? I know you take care of it, yes. And I'm glad, I'm actually, after hearing about the trucks and the state that they were in, I'm glad that we're able to try to help with that. We don't want you out on the road in a truck or a vehicle that breaks down, you or anyone else.
All right, thank you.
So at this point, is there any public comment on what we've been talking about today? I don't see any. Are there any comments from the directors? No? Well then, I think that we are finished. I will adjourn this meeting and we'll see you back next month.